Well, I'm live, it says here. So, live from Lake of the Ozarks Bikefest. It's about 9 o'clock. We're back at the house. We'll see if anybody drops in here for the stream. But I went out and did some demo rides today. Rode the Sportster S at the Harley Davidson dealer. And then I went over to Indian and rode the Scout Bobber. And also got a chance to ride the brand new Indian Chief Dark Horse. So, if you hear people talking in the background, don't worry. That's just my friends. We're all hanging out here at the house having a drink. So if anybody's out there in the chat, say hi. I see one person's joined in here. But I was going to talk about of course, I'm going to do a video on it, but I was going to talk a little bit about riding demo rides and the experiences and riding these two bikes back to back. There's been a lot of talk about them. And so I did a video on the Sportster S versus the FTRS. And one of the things, after comparing the bikes on specs that I was concerned about was that single disc brake that everybody's talking about, and saying that's not good enough for this kind of muscle bike and everything else. And the other thing was that rear suspension. So I rode the Sportster S, and Firecracker, who's sitting over there doing something, she was riding a Sport Glide with me on a demo ride. And we had a car, a little ways in front of us, and they went to the light and it turned red and we were going to stop. So there was nobody in front of me and there was nobody right up my butt. So I had an opportunity to really kind of lay on the brakes and see how well they were. And then I got it down to 10 mile an hour and I let off, and then I crammed on the brakes again just to see how well it really would pile to a stop, from 40 mile an hour and from 10 mile an hour. And I have to say, I was surprised at how good the brakes felt, especially for a single disc brake. The bike was really good. The engine's awesome. It's the Pan America engine, and it's just awesome. Everybody who's worried about the detuning on that bike, let me tell you, it runs good. So it was awesome. They're doing demos at Lake of the Ozarks, Harley Davidson at Bikefest this weekend. That's where we're at. So Lake of the Ozarks Bikefest. And Harley's got demos here. Indian has demos here. And so, I got on that bike in second gear, and at 4,000 RPM, that thing just wants to pull. It just wants to go. You crack on the throttle. I mean, I didn't even peg it, not once, because I didn't want to be getting crazy or getting out of control with it. It's not something I'm used to. It's a demo ride. Also, don't want to abuse it too much. But, I mean, you crack half throttle in that thing, and you better hold on because it pulls. And that pulls all day. It just pulls and pulls and pulls. You shift gears, and it just keeps pulling. I mean, it's tuned well for 121 horsepower. If you think that's not enough on a 500-pound bike, go ride it and see what you think, because I thought it had plenty of power. It might not be the very fastest bike out there, but it's got more than enough power to be fun. What's up, man? So, it was a fun ride. I really liked it. The other thing that I was concerned about with the Sportster S after looking at all the specs and doing the comparisons was that rear suspension. It's only got like 2 inches of travel in the rear suspension. And I have to say, was it comfy? It's not a cruiser. It's not an all-day ride kind of bike. It was very firm, but it didn't bottom out. I didn't feel like the 2 inches was constantly bottoming out every time I hit a bump or anything like that. But it is a very firm ride, a firm seat. It's not the softest seat in the world. Firecracker, you want to come say hi? She's getting ready to go outside and smoke. Can't smoke in the rental house. Say hi. I want you guys all to know, if you haven't subbed to Firecracker on Two Wheels yet, you need to do it. She's almost at 200. I told her we're going to try and break 200 this weekend with the meet and greet and everything else. So go out and give her a little love on YouTube if you haven't already subscribed. Firecracker on Two Wheels. And Robert, I know your opinion on the Sportster S is irrelevant. Your wife has informed you that it'll be her next bike. Who are you to argue with her? We have both ridden sport bikes. Thanks, Mike. So that comment, I'll throw that up here on the screen for everybody else to see. It was a fun bike. It was a very, very fun bike to ride. No, it's not an all-day ride kind of bike. But if you want something to ride back and forth to work for a half hour or an hour, or go out and ride for the afternoon and really be able to lay this thing down the curves, it's a good bike for that. I went out and there's a demo ride loop that they do, and I rode it on the Iron 1200, the same loop, and I dragged making one of the turns on it because there's a little roundabout that you can kind of really lay it into at about 20 mile an hour. I dragged the Sportster Iron 1200. This bike didn't even get close to dragging. It's got the lean angle, it's got the power, it's got the brakes. Suspensions, I'm sure there'll be some aftermarket deals for that eventually and stuff like that, and maybe a little more comfortable seat. I know there's an aftermarket seat, I think, already in the works for it and stuff, but it was a very fun bike to ride. Now, to give you some comparison, I went down to Indian this afternoon. I rode that this morning at Harley. I went down to Indian and I rode the Scout Bobber, which everybody wants to compare these two bikes because they're kind of the same bobber look. And the Scout Bobber is 100 horsepower and the Sportster S is 121 horsepower. And I have to say that both are smooth. I think the Sportster S is definitely more powerful, smoother, feels better. I like the Scout Bobber. It had good brakes. I did not like the way they had the bar end mirrors set up on it. They were down, and I had to move my wrist to see because it was so narrow, just the positioning. The Harley bar end mirrors were up above, and they had good visibility. They worked. So I don't, both have the digital displays. They have the ride modes. The Scout Bobber I rode was does not have the ride modes and stuff, but the Indian Chief I rode does have all that. And
I wasn't there paying attention to her, and
I have to say, to compare them, I think I know the Sportster S costs more, but that'd be the bike I would choose. Not that the Scout Bobber is not a fun bike, but I just I felt a little more comfortable. That's another thing to talk about in the Sportster S. They say it's forward controls, but you set forward and you lean forward a little bit aggressive, and I found that I felt like I was sitting more in a mid-control position with my knees. I wasn't stretched out like I would be with forward controls. I was a little more, my knees were at more of an angle. I sat more like an upright mid-control position, even though they call this forward controls because you set so far forward to the bars and stuff. Hey, Quasi, what's up? I thought the Bobber, rode good and stuff, but, I have to say, I like the Sportster S better. I felt a little more comfortable on that foot position. When I got on the Bobber, the Scout Bobber, it felt like the Honda Rebel 1100 that I rode. It felt a little more cramped in the knee area. My knees a little higher than I like. My feet felt, pulled in a little more and just a hair. But I thought the Sportster S was a little more comfortable. When I got on the Sportster S, even though it's not what I would call forward controls as far as the leg position, it was more comfortable. Just all there was to it. I was just more comfortable on the Sportster S. Me personally, now I'm only 5'8.5", 5'9", right in there. So don't have a long inseam, like 32 inches. So that's kind of how it fit for me on the legs. Comparing bikes is, something you really got to look at what you're riding it for, how you're going to be riding, what's best for you. Like I tell you, everybody, when I talk about comparing bikes, I can compare specs all day long. I can tell you what I think of the bike, but the important thing for you to do is go out to events like this where you can ride both bikes, see which one you like the best, and which one you like the best is the right bike for you if it's in your budget. And if you have to sacrifice something because of budget, then that's what you have to do. But I really appreciate Head Indian and Lake of the Ozarks Harley Davidson bringing demos to town and letting people like me get on these things and ride and stuff. It was a lot of fun. Now, I rode that Indian Chief Dark Horse. Now, I'll talk about that real quick. Not to be comparing it to the others, but I did ride the Bobber version. And, the digital display on it was cool. It's like the Harley digital display. It looked good. So, that was okay. The engine was not as smooth. Of course, it's an air-cooled engine, and the Scout Bobber and the Sportster S are both liquid-cooled engines, and they definitely felt smoother with the engine. They felt better. The Indian Chief Dark Horse was like 650 pounds and 120 foot-pounds of torque, but it felt maybe a little more torquey than the Sportster S, and it is, but it's also heavier, but it didn't feel faster or better. And to be honest, I was a little disappointed in the Chief's brakes. I mean, when you first grab them, you could feel them kind of grab at first, but they weren't progressive. It's like after the first initial squeeze, you had to really squeeze to get additional braking. It wasn't like you pull a little bit and you feel it pulling all the way. It's like you pull a little bit and it initially pulls, and then it kind of doesn't feel like it's pulling anymore, and you got to pull harder. It's hard to explain. but I was not real. The brakes didn't inspire me with confidence, front or rear. The Scout Bobber had good rear brakes. Front brake was okay. It was there. It was, you knew it was there when you pulled it, but it was not awesome. I think the brakes on the Sportster S were very good front and back. I tested each independently, as much as I could, but I had a good time riding demo bikes. And I just want to tell everybody to go out to events like this and do a demo ride. Ride as many bikes as you can. Check them out. Thank the vendors for bringing them to events like this and giving people like us an opportunity to do this. But, some people don't like the exhaust profile on the Sportster S. A lot of people are hung up on that. I think, the more you look at it, the more you get used to it. And I didn't mind it. So I didn't think it was particularly hot. I didn't have problems with the heat on it. I felt more heat, which is to be expected on the Chief Dark Horse, which is an air-cooled engine. And I could definitely tell a big difference. I rode it and the Scout Bobber back to back, and I could definitely tell a big difference in heat. And I didn't notice a problem with the heat on the Sportster S personally. So Ozark HD Rider is going to be up here Saturday, and he said he's going to ride the Sportster S, and he wants to try out the Street Bob as well. And those are both bikes I've rode this year, and I enjoyed both of them. I did the comparison on the Sportster S, the FTRS. I didn't compare it to the Scout Bobber. Moto Bob did a video on that, and I agree with a lot of the things he said. So I really wanted to just talk about my experience riding them. I rode the FTR earlier this year also, and they're fun bikes. Is it a bike I'm going to buy? I don't know. The Sportster S has got a better chance of me buying it than any of the other two, but I don't know if that's the bike I want. I mean, I'm kind of interested still in the Trident 660, which is $8,000 for a little bike to ride back and forth to work instead of taking the bagger. So we'll just see what the future holds, what we can swing next year maybe and stuff. But just want to give you guys all a shout out here from Bikefest. We're having a good time. Things are going well here. Haven't seen any problems. Haven't seen any drama. So I know a lot of people are coming to town tomorrow. We've got more friends coming up tomorrow. We've been hanging out with friends that live up here and stuff, and we've had a good time. So all I can tell you is go look at them. Even if you don't feel like if you buy a new one, they don't care if you're going to buy them. I mean, they'd love for you to. And their hope is that you ride it and you're impressed enough with it that you'll go that extra mile to buy one. But even if you, ride a new Softail custom, or the standard, you can go out and find one that's 4 or 5 years old. It's going to be very similar. It'll give you an idea of how that bike rides, what the motor's like, what the riding style and position, the balance is like, what the brakes are like. I'm hoping with the Indian Chief, and me and the sales guy talked about that. That's a brand new model this year. Maybe they've got a few things to work on, and they can refine those brakes a little bit and make it a little better. That was just my impression. And I only rode one bike. Maybe there is, something up the demo bike. They get abused and used and stuff like that. But, for whatever it's worth, it's what I thought of the bikes. So James says he's going to be up here tomorrow. So, and Quasi says, for the Trident. Yeah, I think it'd be a fun bike to have. So, anyway, I just wanted to jump on, tell you guys what I thought, and give everybody a shout out, say hi. I've got my Jim Beam and soda, and I'm going to go hang out with my friends here. Just wanted to say hi to everybody, and we'll see you all soon. So, peace, and thanks for the support.
They give you like a yard thing, you can get it regular or frozen. And I was getting frozen.